So, welcome to this webinar where we talk about how the education has moved online, how online learning is the new normal. And before we start and explore the various changes that have happened in the recent past, I just wanted to get an idea of I want to know something about the people who are present in this webinar right now. So, if you can just please share what you guys are currently doing. If you're a student, then what you're studying. If you're a teacher as well, then what are you teaching in the online space? So very quickly, before I share something about myself, wanted to get to know all of you a bit more before we start with this session. Yeah. All right. Anyway, so just keep sharing your responses, and also make a note that whatever questions that you might have, I might not be able to answer during the course of the webinar, but I'll definitely take those up in the last about 10 to 15 minutes as we near the end of the webinar. We'll open it up to a discussion in case you have any queries, anything that you need my perspective on, and anything that you want to share your perspective about. So we'll open it up to discussion post towards the end of the webinar. So let's get started. So something about myself. My name is Anshuman Bhardawaj. I am the academic head for the quants division for IMS's Center for International Education. So mostly I deal with exams like GMAT and GRE. I'm a GMAT specialist. Uh, I've been teaching for more than 5 years now, and over this duration, I've taught more than 5,000 students. And I've been teaching for slightly more than 3 years online as well. So I have a quite a lot of experience of teaching in the online space. It was very interesting because uh, a couple of years ago I had kind of foreseen how the online space will become something that will just exponentially grow. And what this COVID pandemic has done, it has just kind of thrusted it even more. Uh, I'm a bit Spilani alumnus, and if you want to, in case, reach out to me, please make a note of my email address. You can reach out to me with any query that you might have. Right, so let's get underway. This session is about sharing my experiences uh, over this course of 3 years, how the online space itself has changed. Obviously, in the last 1 year, it has radically, there have been a lot of improvisations done. And I'm going to start with a few statistics to just kind of give you the perspective of what to expect and how the education industry is kind of, confronting a big change in the very near future. So, what we are going to cover is number one, why is it important for us to adapt to online education? We'll discuss a few points here. I'll take you through some very interesting stats, some of which you might be familiar with, and we can kind of discuss and debate towards the end. Secondly, we'll look at ways, obviously, because it's a shift that is, it's not a uniform or a smooth shift for everyone. To go from kind of the physical education into the online learning requires some changes, and we need to first understand how it's different, how online education can be better in many of the aspects as well, right? Some of you, which many of you might not probably agree at this point of time, but definitely you will once I share a few points on that. And towards the end, we'll talk about how we kind of need to have a different perspective when we're looking at learning online as opposed to if you were to attend live in the in center sessions or the physical classes. So these are the three main things that we're going to discuss. Let's start with why adapting to online learning is important. The fact that there's pretty much no option that you have right now aside, there are many other points as well. So it's not the only thing that kind of we're forced into a lockdown, and that's online learning is the only option we have. Yes, it is pretty much the case, but even that aside, I want to bring to your notice how the education industry and the other industries as well are changing very rapidly with the technology kind of making huge inroads every day. Right. So Some of it is obviously has been in the online education industry and the other industries have been propelled by the COVID-19 scenario. They've kind of forced the entire globe into the lockdown, which is now coming out of it slowly and gradually. But to share with you a few stats, 91% of the students were impacted by the lockdown, and more than half of those were serviced through e learning for the first time. So you can imagine the numbers and the sudden shift in servicing with respect to education that came about just in a matter of a few weeks, and that kind of has changed the entire perspective of how we view education. As it has completely changed the entire ball game. uh, Many of and obviously everyone would be aware of this and would have kind of experienced it themselves at some level. So many of my knowns, many of the school teachers who probably, so many of the people that I interacted with before were very amazed and intrigued by how online education really works. How can you address a group of 50, 100, 150 students sitting right in your home? And the same people who are teachers in the schools have kind of made acquaintance with and now gotten comfortable with teaching online themselves. So that's just a huge shift because not the technical ability aspect of it, which obviously has seen a tremendous shift, but also the change in the mindset. Most of all, many of the people who were probably hesitant and were skeptical of how can you really impart knowledge online, uh, now know firsthand of how it's done, right? So that's one thing. Secondly, the top schools around the world, you consider the Harvard, which is probably the topmost school in the world. You consider the best schools in India, the IMs, the ISB, even the IITs would be following the same route very soon. They have now started delivering their sessions online. Harvard, though, was into online teaching earlier as well, but the main courses, not the free ones, are also now being delivered online. What that has caused, the effect of that is the students who make it to Harvard do not necessarily have to travel to the USA either. I know this firsthand because I teach for GMAT. I have many students who make it to Harvard University as well. And especially for the next half a year to 1 year, they'll be serviced through online classes. So there's just a tremendous shift in how we cater to our students. The third fact is kind of on related to Zoom. It's I've mentioned Zoom here, but what we want to learn from here is the industry is evolving, with respect to the changes that are happening as well. So Zoom's revenue, Zoom, everyone knows about Zoom. Quite a lot of controversy around it as well, whether it got banned or not. I won't go into that. But Zoom's revenue grew by around 170% in the first quarter post COVID scenario. So it grew by 170%. The growth is not 170%, it grew by 170%. You can imagine the kind of number of people that it catered to. Everyone went to Zooms, right from the school teachers to the kids who never had any experience of learning online. Everyone. So parents now don't have access to their phones because their kids are studying online. They just log onto the phones, log into the Zoom, and attend the classes. So that's how big a shift it is. What is the takeaway from this is, let's not think of it as a temporary change, right? That probably because there's a lockdown, this has happened. We need to acknowledge that this has brought about a change in the consciousness of the society as a whole. That something that probably we were aware of is now the norm, isn't it? So education and the way it is imparted has changed for good. Even when the lockdown lifts, and I hope it does soon, let's say half a year, 1 year down the line, because it's still here to stay for a bit. And when it does, uh, don't think that we'll go back to the offline learning in a big way. That's not going to happen. The online learning is going to be the norm, is going to be a bigger thing than the physical classes, just because of the kind of freedom, the kind of clarity, and the kind of deliverability it brings to the plate. Once the masses get used to it, there's no going back after that. Perspective towards education has changed for good. That's the learning. And why I want to address over this point is that there are still people who are probably thinking, Okay, let's wait for a couple of months and the lockdown will lift. Even if it does, guys, online education is going to be a thing. Let's make use of it. Let's be involved in it. Let's be a part of it, is what I would advise to all. This was the previous slide, obviously, talked about the impact on the education industry and some of the interesting stats that I shared that give you a perspective of how it's changing. I want to also take this as an opportunity to talk about the industries, outside of education. So these 2 points might not look to be very interrelated, but they are in a way. So Indian e-commerce market expected to grow to around $84 billion, which is three times of what it is right now by 2024. So what does that imply? Retail, right? That's the last thing that one expects to move online. That is expected to grow thrice over. All of you have been ordering stuff, at home, uh, even vegetables. The simple, most basic things that you obviously can go to the market and pick it right off. You now know a way of how to get it delivered right to your home. So this is going to stay. What it kind of implies is that we are moving into a sphere that's increasingly becoming more and more online. The COVID-19 and the pandemic has kind of thrusted it even more. The second point, and if there are any working professionals here, Google's employees to work from home till July 2021. So Google has kind of extended and has given the liberty to its employees to work from home till 2021. So I'll share with you a couple of interesting stories. So work from home is something that is very common in European countries, in America. It's no big deal, but in India it's still not as common. Why? Because the perspective is that if someone is at home, they're definitely not going to work. That's how the bosses think, that they're just going to chill, they're going to while away their time, and no work is going to happen. This mindset has been changed as well, forcibly so, but it has changed. So why to Google as an example? Obviously, is it's a huge brand, it's a huge company. It's kind of like an ecosystem in itself, kind of like an economy in itself. So work from home is going to be a new norm as well. And what you cannot even start of thinking of the outcomes of this. Can you imagine that cities like Delhi and Bombay and every other major cities, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, these grew because people would move to these cities in search of employment, in search of, uh, you know, uh, to grow in their careers. Can you imagine what kind of possibilities working from home or the online space offers to people who probably are not based out of Delhi or Mumbai or any of these metros? So you have an access right now to showcase your expertise, right, to the globe, I would say, not just to your city, to your locality, to your state or to your nation, but to the entire globe. uh, you know by not moving, without moving to some of these metros. So there's, trust me and mark my words on this, that you're going to see a huge shift in the way we work from now on. I was staying in Mumbai. I've moved back to Chandigarh, which is my home state, and it's going to be that ways for a bit. And who knows, maybe work from home is the new norm, and that's how we kind of work from now on. So the idea is that the lifestyle and the careers uh, are now heavily dependent on technology, and they'd be even more so the more we move further, which further necessitates it for you to get acquainted with the online education space. The sooner you get acquainted with it, the better your chances of seamlessly transitioning into a work environment which is mostly online, and that's how most of the work environments are going to be. Obviously, I'm a civil engineer as well, so construction can't happen online, but most of the work environments are going to move online. Another interesting aspect, and I want you guys to think about it, kind of ponder over it, and explore all the new possibilities that will arise out of it. Let's now talk about, Abhi, we've talked about how, why it is important to kind of adapt to this, right? it's just the new world order. Well, if we frankly have to adapt. There's no other way. If we don't, we might lag behind, and this is something that we've already observed. How online education can be a better way of learning, and just quietly dozing off in the class and not getting caught is obviously a great plus point. But let's explore some of the things aside that. So I'm going to just put off my webcam so that you guys can see the entire screen itself. Right? Technology facilitates learning better. There are no doubts about it. Over the last 3 months, over the last 3 years rather, that I've been into teaching online, just the speed at which the way we deliver education online has changed is tremendous. So, number one, online education allows you to access expertise at your comfort and convenience. You see the boys, right? Lying on the floor and just leisurely watching some of the informational stuff. I don't advise you to lie at the floor, by the way, but the point is crystal clear. Not that we are not used to learning online, we are in our ways. Many of us have, gone to YouTube and probably checked out some videos on how to work out, right? Or how to cook. Well, cooking was a rage in this lockdown. So all of us have picked up stuff online, have learned online through YouTube or through some other platform already. So we know what it's all about. But even the formal education is in a rapid manner moving online. And there are just a lot of positive points that go parallel to that. Convenience and comfort is one of it. You can, if it's a recorded session, you can just pretty much watch it at any time that you feel is right for you. If you're a night person, you can watch your classes in the night. If you're a morning person, you can watch your classes in the morning. uh, if probably you feel that you're a bit down, you don't really want to attend the class now, you might want to do it later tomorrow, you can do that as well. So convenience, flexibility, comfort is something that is really a top priority for the current generation. A lot of our students are moving to the online platform as well. Even before the pandemic, they were moving to the online platform because of the positive points that we have, along with uh, uh, you know uh, headed by the convenience and the comfort factor of it. Secondly, uh, and this is something that probably a lot of you do not know, but online education is not necessarily boring. It's quite engaging as well. Uh, I do this a lot in my classes. They are just full of gusto. They are very interactive. We have discussions, we have quizzes, we have games that we play in the classes, and just the online platform and how the softwares are built, how the tools are inbuilt into the software, kind of facilitate running those very seamlessly as opposed to in the physical center, right? So there are just many things to look forward to. Probably some of you have already experienced it. For those of you who have not, you will soon in the near future. Uh, with respect to the live classes, now there are two kinds of things that we deliver through online education. Number one is live classes, which is you attend, you log into the session, and live tutoring is happen where you can ask your doubt, you can interact with the teacher, and you can get your queries sorted and all of that. You can interact with your peers as well. The other kind of online education is a set of recorded interactive sessions, right? Or a set of recorded live classes as well, where you have the freedom to probably watch a recorded class later if you could not log in on time for some reason to attend the live class itself. So, just a lot of convenience. Record it now and watch it later, which is something that you can do with this webinar as well, by the way, right? In case you've just missed it, just reach out to Study India and you'll be able to access this as well. Uh, the point is that there's just, you know, because of the various nuances and the subtleties of various tools at our disposal through these wonderful online softwares and platforms, it's just a lot of fun, a lot of convenience, and very targeted manner that we can deliver education and you can receive education online. I touched upon it slightly in the previous slide, and I'll add up on that. I'll just kind of build up on that, uh, and to, so I'll share with you this fact that I've shared with a lot of people over the course of the last couple of years. So when I started teaching online, so a year into it, many of the people would ask me, do the students really ask any questions online? And doesn't it get very boring for a student? Do the students really ask their doubts? One interesting fact: online classes are much, much more interactive than the actual physical classes, because this might not be true for all of you, but many of us are, I myself was of a similar kind, are hesitant of asking questions in the actual physical class for some reason or the other. I always preferred not to ask the question. I used to sort it out myself after the class, no matter how much I used to struggle with it. But so people like these, people who are generally more shy comparatively, and there are a lot of those, find it more convenient to get their doubts sorted, to interact more even with their peers in an online setup. It kind of gives them that freedom of of lack of prejudice from anyone's part. So it really is a very highly interactive platform, and something I've discovered over the classes. I'll share with you a physical center class. If it take 2 hours for me, the same content would take about 2.5 to quarter to 3 hours for me to deliver on the online space. That's how interactive the classes can get. Uh, One other aspect, the interaction aside, or rather interaction of the mentor and the student aside, that typically the people and the groups that offer online education have a very good ecosystem built around it. Even Study India, has a very nice platform. It provides you a space where teachers and mentors can freely interact. That mentors, or rather mentors and students, can freely interact. Mentors can interact within themselves. The students can interact within themselves. There's a lot of meaningful conversation going around, which is typically the case in any setup of online education. So it's a very targeted, dedicated engagement and peer group conversation that happens, or that runs parallel with the actual delivery of the education. So, and this is something that we make it a point in IMS, in a huge manner, to ensure that the students don't feel like if they're not in the centers, they're not interacting with the other students. It's in fact even more interactive. They have their own Telegram groups or WhatsApp groups, or they even kind of schedule their own group discussion sessions. And good thing about it is that it is really targeted. There's no bull going around anywhere, which is something that you see a lot in the classroom center. So it's really to the point, really targeted, really something that encourages growth, and you can really pick up a lot of points, share your points. And as the last point very nicely says, the focus purely is on learning. There's a lot of a lot of, pardon my use of the word, but a lot of crap gets cut out of it when we're in an online sphere, in presence of mentors and teachers and interacting that ways. So it's more interactive, especially because student engagement increases multifold when we're in an online setup. Yeah, so a very, very important point. I can't stress enough how important this point is, because I was thinking about this when I was preparing the deck for this presentation, as to how would I present this point, because it is something that probably a lot of people might not have thought about as yet. But for some of you who have been studying online for a bit, would know this already. For some of you who would start studying online, this would be a huge value add to you. That to learn online, and if you do that for a while, you'll get to know this about yourself, that you'll become more responsible, more self-aware, more, you'll have more clarity as to what you want and what you want to learn. See, it's very easy to go in a class. I've attended classes in the physical center. I've been a cat student myself. So we all know how much of nonsense goes on in a class. Unnecessary nonsense goes on in a class. As enjoyable as it is, it's nonsense at the end of the day. uh, so you still have those little perks, that even if you're not interested to learn, you can still go to the class and enjoy. To sustain in the online sphere, if you really want to learn and be a part of online education, you want to learn something online, you'll only be able to do that if you really want to learn that particular thing, or that learn that particular subject. If you are really not interested in let's say mathematics, and you're attending math classes, you don't give a damn about math, you'll find that you'll drop off. You'll probably log on your laptop, you'll kind of put yourself on mute and do whatever that you had to do anyway. So it gives you the freedom to exit a classroom without anyone even knowing. We had a lot of memes, coming up in the recent past where teachers really struggled to mark attendance and stuff like that, though that was on a lighter vein. But what it kind of points towards is that learning something online requires you to be far more self disciplined and far more motivated as opposed to learning probably in a classroom, in a school setup, in a college setup, or in a coaching atmosphere setup, right? These are two different ball games altogether. If you're someone who's making a shift into e-learning, and if you're not interested, let's say in something that you've been doing or something that you've been studying nonchalantly, because a lot of us s- are a part of a program or study something that we don't even know why we are studying. So a lot of people who are like that will kind of start questioning themselves as to, do I really want to study that, or is it something else that I really need to kind of probably learn. If you're really not interested in what is going on in the class, you'll watch the YouTube videos or whatever. You'll probably Netflix and chill rather than YouTube and learn, or rather, the online class and learn. So the point here is online education will make you guys more aware, which is need of the hour, and you'll learn to self counsel yourself. You learn to prioritize what your interests are and what is it that you want to build a career in. What is it that you're best at? Maybe it is learning a guitar. That's, I don't know, maybe you'll discover, and it kind of will facilitate you moving in that direction. Maybe it's cooking, maybe it's yoga, or teaching yoga, I don't know. So all of these are under the same uh, you know the same umbrella of online education being learned and imparted. So there's just endless opportunities. Explore the world, explore this online learning scene, and go on with what you really enjoy. Because trust me, if you're learning online something that you don't really have an interest in, you leave it after a bit. No one can kind of keep you glued to the screen. So it will teach you to be more motivated if you're learning something online, and more than that, you'll get a better clarity about yourself as to what you really want to learn and what you really want to do in the future. Right. Last but not the least, with respect to how online learning really presents to you a lot of wonderful things with a lot of wonderful things. Uh, so internet is not a physical class is limited to that particular room, right? Which might have students from a particular locality, or at the max from a particular city. Or you might have something like a quota coaching industry, which sees a lot of students moving from the northern Indian states to quota and learning JE stuff. So because I'm an engineering student, I'm taking an example of uh, the quota coaching industry. But still, quota is not something that caters to the entire India, much less caters to the entire globe. But the online education really has taken away these boundaries, these physical boundaries, and you're really with the world, the entire world. You're learning with the world, you're talking with the world, you're also delivering to the entire world. So never underestimate the space that you're in. It's just there's a huge scope of exploration what goes online. Even when you kind of would have transitioned into the, if you created an account and studying, you would have seen just the number of mentors and students present here. The perspective changes, it widens. Your horizon would just widen, your gaze would be so much wider. And you're really kind of, it's online education is not limited to a, s- a province, a city, a state, a nation. It's really global. So while staying local, you can really go global in terms of learning stuff, learning new perspectives and ideas, and sharing uh, your ideas with the entire world as well. It's just a wonderful thing, and you'll know it once you are an active part of it. Right. So this last part of this presentation, and after this we'll open it up to Q&A. is, uh, you know, we do have to consciously make a few changes to transition smoothly from the physical coaching and the physical classes that we're used to learning online. So the first point is something that I shared in the initial slides. E-learning is here to stay, and there's no way you can do without it, right? So don't think that after half a year or after a year you're going to go back to the regular way of how the education used to happen. And here I'm addressing those people who are really hesitant of probably moving online. uh, that's not going to happen, guys. We're moving gradually. We were moving gradually, and now we'll move rapidly towards a space that is highly about e-learning. You'll see a huge shift, and just embrace it before you miss the bus. I think I can't be much more clear than that. The second point also is something that I've touched about. Online learning requires a higher degree of motivation and clarity. Prepare yourself mentally. So you can go to a class, you can kind of create all the nuisance with your friends without being interested in the subject being taught in the class. That is something that you really can't do in an online setup. So what this will force you to do is to develop a more clarity about yourself. Let's embrace this, because this will bring about more self consciousness amongst the masses, which is just a great thing. Let's embrace it, right? And also, it requires a lot of motivation, a lot of dedication to go through all the online sessions. We might have various reasons to come to the physical classes. Maybe you just want to get outside of your home. Maybe you just, I don't know, your crush is there in the class, or you can have multiple reasons to be a part of the physical classes. But to be a part of the online classes, there has to be one main reason, more important than anything, that it is really something that you want to learn, right? So uh, I've already talked enough about this. The third point, yes, a very important one, and something that I kind of discovered along my journey of teaching online. So, sometimes it can just be overwhelming to see the amount of expertise and knowledge outside. So all of those who are studying for any competitive exams, like might be preparing for CAT, or I don't know, for SSC or whatever, for JEs, you'll have 100,000 different experts, all talking their different language, and all of them are right by their own rights. So there's no right or wrong. There's just a lot of various perspective and takes at how education can be best imparted, or what kind of material or curriculum would suit you best. So it's easy to kind of get overwhelmed. A lot of students who just visit every read every thread on Quora, or follow 10 YouTube channels for the same topic, they get really confused at the end of the day. So the idea is for you to figure out what kind of learning suits you best, and to kind of and you yourself will then gravitate towards the kind of people, or towards the kind of ecosystem and setups where your style of learning really matches their style of delivery. So just be mindful of that. Do your research. Right, it's a vast and a diverse space. We have a lot of information online. Think of it, the entire world has entire world's knowledge, opinions, information is there on the web space. So it's just truckloads of information. You need to figure out what would work best for you. Never settle for the quality of content you receive, right? So another important, and this is really a plus point, probably the teacher in your locality wasn't really that great. I'm being modest when I say wasn't really that great, because I don't really want to use other words. But maybe your teacher wasn't really up to the mark, and but you didn't have any choice. That's the only teacher you had in your locality. Well, what to do? That's not the case when you move online. You have experts available to you dime a dozen. Trust me on that. You have a lot of experts pretty much on everything and anything that you want to learn. So one advice for me is never settle for anything mediocre when it especially comes to learning something from somewhere. Always make it a point that you have the right to evaluate and judge the teacher or the workspace or the ecosystem that will deliver you the education in the best possible manner. This choice is something that you didn't really have in the physical setup. You had to some extent, but it's here. It's just a huge, freedom and flexibility that you have. The last point, and last but not the least, get tech savvy, at least to some extent. Get acquainted with the basic workings of how to learn online, how to use the setup. And this is something that I'm talking to probably the people who are not tech savvy, who haven't really used any learning platforms before, who really struggle with, logging into a class, delivering the class. A lot of teachers here might be present as well. So it's really important for us teachers also to kind of grow into this space, grow into the comfort of learning and delivering online. So I've a lot of my colleagues who really were very apprehensive and skeptical and really kind of abhorred the idea of teaching online really had to change themselves, right? It was a huge personality shift that they had to make. And some of the stats, just carrying on from this point, uh, th- so what happened post the lockdown obviously was education was just cut off, and especially the people who were probably, uh, below the middle class in the poorer class, or who cannot afford tools as laptops, or they cannot really pay the fees of the online coaching and stuff like that. They really bore the brunt. And but I'm glad to share that a lot of people have kind of started now delivering education for free. Study 24/7 is a great platform where you can share it freely with anyone. You can get knowledge, get access to knowledge, from even the best of the experts without paying anything. So, but to ensure that to be able to do that, you kind of really need to get more tech savvy. That just goes without saying, has to happen, right? So a few couple of shifts rather, multiple shifts I'd say, that you need to make before you move into online learning, exiting from the regular center setup or the physical setup of learning. So I these are the few things that I had to share, right? And I'd welcome any questions, any discussions, anyone who has any questions from me. Uh, so I particularly teach for GMAT. I'm a student of CAT myself in the past, and GMAT industry probably moved online before any other industry because of the nature of the exam and the nature of people that we cater to, right? So, but even the other industries, even in IMS, so study abroad or GMAT was the first division to really start with the live classes. Even subjects like CAT, BBA, and all the undergrad subjects as well are now gradually moving online, have moved online rather in a big way. So if you're someone who's just getting started, if you're someone who's teaching or wants to probably gain some perspective as to how to make most of it, I'll be happy to share my insights into it. Or if there's someone who wants to probably advise or share their own perspective and ideas, I'll be happy to hear you out as well at the same time. Right? So I open it up for discussion for the next about 4 to 5 minutes. So if you have anything to say, comment, ask, please just type it in the chat. Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that, Anju. So so there are quite a lot of questions here. So I try to address most of these, right? Do I think primary and secondary schools are ready for this shift to online teaching? I think they already have moved in a big manner. And from the person, and the question is coming from a person who already knows this, but they have already moved online in a big manner. All the teachers who probably thought they'll never be able to adapt to technology have done that successfully. And they now reach out to masses. And it's just so inspiring to see their commitment to be able to do that. So Tanmay, uh, I think that's a good question. So Tanmay asks, with limited tech resources, do we think that we can sustain complete shift to online teaching in India? So probably complete shift won't happen, and it should not happen either, because physical education will never really die down, because it has, a lot of aspects and attributes to it that probably online can't cater to, and vice versa. Both the things are there. So we'll probably reach to a point where there's a very nice, perfect balance, where we have a blend of both online and face to face or in class or physical coaching, whatever you might want to call it. I'm glad to know that, Ruth. So Tej, there are a lot of tools. Which online class tool app will I suggest? Well, there are a lot of tools. Some of them are more popular than the others. I really won't probably name one, because that might be just going against the others. But there are quite a lot of tools, and some of those you're already familiar with. The more important thing is that most of these tools to the needs, cater to the needs of someone who's receiving the education really nicely. Some points are good about one, uh, probably not so good about the other, and probably some might be better in some aspects than the other. Uh, so it would really depend on the ecosystem or on the person who's teaching you as well. But so I'd really ask you, if in case you're a student, to trust in your educator, in your teacher, in your organization, in your institute. I'm sure that they'll uh, make it a point to ensure that they choose or go ahead with a tool that uh, helps you get the education and the learning very smoothly. Right. So Ruth, Google Meet are definitely Google Meet is more of a meeting kind of a space, not necessarily a class session kind of a space. So you might really want to explore some other options, and quite a lot of are coming up. Right. So how to maintain the same interactive environment throughout online? So, as you know, it's just the sheer number of questions that I have here is a testament to the fact that it is really interactive. And obviously, right now, I could not have the quizzes or the various polls as a part of this webinar. Maybe the next time I will. But as I discussed, there's the inhibition of asking a question or interacting with the mentor is kind of taken away from a student in an online space, which makes it very interactive. This is something probably one doesn't, one cannot really imagine unless they've experienced it. But from someone who's been a part of the setup for a time, you can really take my word for that. And as I shared, the same content, if I were to deliver in 2 hours in a physical setup, might take about 2.5 to 3 hours to deliver in an online space, because that's just how interactive it is, and students just love that. Yes, so Tej, as I said, to be able to focus, and probably I did not include this as a part of a stat, but a recent research from a very well reputed journal showed that the retention from online classes is about 30 to 40% better for students as compared to the physical classes. Why? It's a very simple reason why. Because of the fewer number of distractions. Fewer the distractions, better your concentration, better your focus, better you'll retain. Right? It's so, without any doubt in my mind as well, if you're regularly attending classes online or learning online, you're totally focused on that, right? So the retention is much, much better. Does it make more sense for edtech platforms to introduce legitimate online tests from colleges, schools in the current scenario? So I think we'll see that happening very soon, Danish. So it's on the way. Many of the things have already started happening. The innovations that were probably one could not have imagined 1 year back. We're already seeing those things. So it's really huge strides that we're making into the entire sphere of online learning. How can one accustom oneself to better concentration while working from home? Well, I to start off, let's not have the TV on while having the online classes, right? Or maybe not have a bottle of cola and a bottle of popcorn while writing a test online. So, though the tutors would always guide, but as because it's very interpersonal, it's not in a group. The online study doesn't really happen in a group. You're in your space, so your concentration is much better. Unless probably to start off with, you get distracted, but after a while, as I said, online learning is something you'll stick with. Learning something online only if you're really interested in that particular thing. So this point that I feel is a very important point, that you'll get more aware of what you really want to learn and really want to engage with in the future as a career option as well. So that clarity will come to all of us in a big manner in an online space. Yeah, so Deepak, what difference do I feel with regards to the future of online education in the rural belt where the potential is huge? So huge inroads possible. Already we have what we require for online education is just a decent network, right? And maybe with a decent device, it can be a phone or a PC. So one of the things I talked about, that people who were rushing to cities like Mumbai and Delhi and Bangalore, you'll see a shift where people would now be rushing back to their hometowns, or if their hometown is probably not a metro city. So you'll see that shift happening. I have shifted myself. Many of the people have, because online sphere just facilitates. You can stay local, learn global. I'll repeat the same point. So a huge potential. You'll see talent coming up like never before. Right. So, Mudita, I hope that even in the rural places, we soon have. I think that is something that a lot of people see as online ecosystem in the online learning space has just come up, right? So you'll see it reaching to even the most rural people very soon. Maybe barring the bottom 5-10%, which it still might take a bit of a time because we don't really know. It's really up to the authorities and the government. I'm really in no position to comment on that. But because this thing has happened and because there'll be a huge demand, it is inevitable that the quality education which we all received in probably in metros will soon reach the people, the deserving people who reside in the remotest of the areas as well. I'm sure that Deepak, that will very soon improve over the next 6 months to 1 year. That 15% will definitely be something over 50% is what I believe. Right. So, do I think 100% attendance needs to be mandatory in the online sessions? Uh, I would have a mixed opinion on this. Probably to start off with, yes, to ensure that people get used to it. It will kind of prevent, because the transition will require some changes to, to be kind of made for a student within himself or herself. So this compulsory attendance in the initial sessions will definitely help. But online, you cannot really you know make it mandatory for one to be present online. Only if a person is anyway interested, they'll anyway be present, is how I see it. I definitely agree with that, Deepak. Yes, very rightly said. So on that note, uh, any other questions, any other things that you probably want to talk to me about for the last couple of minutes, and we'll end the session post that. Right. So thank you all. It was a lot of fun interacting with you. It was a lot of fun delivering the session. Uh, so it was a lot of fun for me to kind of explore what the upcoming possibilities might be. Obviously, I've only touched the surface. We have a lot more in store, and let's kind of make the most of this online education space. Let's make use of it because there's no end of possibilities, right? So thank you all, and wish you all the best with your endeavors with respect to either teaching online or learning online.